Hello, everybody. I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday. I have got an edition of pure stupidity with an equal dose of malice for us to get into today. Now, as you can see on the screen behind me, I do have a link up from The Blaze, and you'll notice the title is Nationwide Ban on Gas Burning Stoves Under Consideration After New Study Claims Appliances Emit Harmful Pollution Linked to Childhood Asthma. Oh, yeah, you read that correctly. Apparently, the appliance of choice for every chef worthy of his hat is now evil. Now, I have to give a shout out to Druid Foxx. She's the one who posted this in our political channel on Blackbird's Brew this morning. Thank you very much, Druid. And I think it's just worthy of a little bit more discussion. I do have the link to the article in the description box below, as well as a link to Glenn Beck's thoughts on his morning show today, and also a link to what the state of Missouri has to say about these proposed bans. So let's pop over to the article. I will be going back and forth between screens as usual, so please don't hesitate to share your thoughts with me. But let's just see what this has to say. Let's start reading. Ahem. The Biden administration's Consumer Product Safety Commission, these names, I'm sorry, but don't the names by themselves just make you want to roll your eyes? But let's bravely press on. This safety commission is considering a nationwide ban on gas burning stoves following a new study that claimed the appliances emit harmful pollution that has been linked to asthma in children, Bloomberg reported. Dear, dear, this sounds dreadful. According to the EPA and the World Health Organization, yeah, the EPA and the World Health Organization. We've had so many recent examples about how they're really looking out for us, haven't we, gang? But they say that gas burning stoves emit unsafe levels of nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter, which are reported to be linked to respiratory illness, cardiovascular issues, cancer, and other conditions. Hmm. So they say. So they say. A December report from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, again another pretentious name with entirely too many syllables, but they claimed that over 12%, gang, of current childhood asthma nationwide is attributed to gas stove use, which is similar to the childhood asthma burden attributed to secondhand smoke exposure. Gas stove usage should be considered in multifaceted asthma prevention approaches, the report added. Given that this exposure is preventable, our study demonstrates that known mitigation strategies will lessen childhood asthma burden from gas stoves. Approximately 35% of homes in the United States use gas stoves. So, uh, first, shout out to Amanda, who is here. Thank you for joining me, Amanda. I can't wait to hear your reaction to all of this. But I want to start with this whole issue of our study has shown. I don't know about the rest of you, but after the past couple of years where we had all kinds of studies just pushed right into our faces and saying, the study says this, therefore you're not permitted to question it, you're not permitted to have a different opinion, you definitely aren't allowed to ask who commissioned the study, how much they're paying for it, and whether or not they've been known to pay to get the results that they wanted. Because depending on how you structure a scientific study, there's a lot of room for maneuver to get exactly the consequence and result that you are looking for. So after that, you'll forgive me if perhaps I'm just a little bit skeptical when people say, well, a study says. I'm sorry. And I say this as a person who has a high regard for the scientific method, even though I do not have a high regard for the institutions who claim to engage in science or in people who claim to be scientists, but are really just people who are very happy to give their benefactors the results that they want. I am not taking this for granted. I am not going to accept that because a study says it, that it's automatically so. I'm not sure what would really constitute proof to me for these claims anymore. And what about other studies in the past? Because this isn't just a recent problem. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I remember there's a time period studies showed that eggs were bad for you. No one should eat eggs ever. And then, maybe eggs aren't so bad. You should at least eat the egg whites. Those are probably okay. Then, there were things saying wine is wonderful for your health. Oh, but no, maybe it isn't. Or chocolate is wonderful for women, particularly at certain times of the month. Oh, no, it isn't. Back and forth, up and down, every which way. Studies can be made to say absolutely anything, and the conditions in which they are conducted make a great deal of difference. So, no, I am sorry. I have reached the end where someone says that a study says, and considering that proof of anything. And can we backtrack a little bit to the World Health Organization? The World Health Organization, who gave us so much helpful information about COVID that now we have learned is not the case. And in fact, not only do we know that's not the case then, they knew it back when they issued the advice. So, can we talk about the credibility issue that a lot of these organizations have, and the fact that maybe, just maybe, we should stop taking these organizations that have these, you know, impressive names or these recognizable abbreviations? Maybe we stop taking them seriously because maybe we just finally get over that hurdle and realize they're not actually looking after our best interests. So let's see. I think there's a bit more to the article, and I want to get on it before I really unleash. But this is a hidden hazard. Richard Trumka Jr., a CPSC commissioner, told Bloomberg any option is on the table. Products that can't be made safe can be banned. Really? Ooh. Trumka reported that the agency plans to open the topic to public comment later this winter. Beside banning the sale of gas burning stoves, the agency is also considering setting emission standards for the appliances because we don't have enough regulations in life, do we? We don't have enough government agencies getting fat off of our tax dollars, telling us what we can and cannot have in our own homes. We just don't have enough of that influence, do we, gang? According to Brady Seals, a co author of the study and a carbon free buildings manager at RMI, gas burning stoves pollute homes. Oh, they're polluters. There's about 50 years of health studies showing that gas stoves are bad for our health. Again, with the studies. It depends on who's paying you and what results you end up getting with these studies. And the strongest evidence is on children and children's asthma. So you see, even if they're setting this up to where even if you question the validity of their statements, can you justify risking the well being of the children? You bad person, you. How could you not do everything possible to protect the children? That's where it's going. By having a gas connection, we are polluting the inside of our homes. Last month, Democrat lawmakers, including Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Representative Don Beyer of Virginia, requested that the CPSC take action against gas stove emissions, stating that the appliances were a cumulative burden that disproportionately impacts minority and low income households. Oh, yeah, of course it does. Sure it does, because it's only in minority and low income houses where we have gas burning stoves. It's not as though rich people don't have gas burning stoves in their houses either. Sure. Have you looked at some of the price tags of some of these stoves? I'm telling you right now, nobody who's poor is paying those prices. They're just not. But it goes on. Mike McKenna, a former energy advisor to President Trump, told Bloomberg that a move to burn gas stoves would be transparently political. No kidding. If the CPSC really wanted to do something about public health, it would ban cigarettes or automobiles long before it moved on to address stoves, McKenna stated. Okay, let's back that shit up right there. Let's abandon the idea that the government has any right to ban anything at all. They are a servant, not our ruler, or at least I still remember that. I don't know about anyone else, but the idea that they should just take action for the good of our health and our well-being as if they've been such good caretakers of us. I mean, that is madness and insanity. But let's struggle through. A CPSC spokesperson told the Daily Caller News Foundation that the department has not yet determined if it will impose regulations on gas stoves. The commission has not proposed regulatory action at this time, the spokesperson stated. Commission staff is also working with voluntary standards organizations to examine gas stove emissions and address potential hazards. Aha. Okay. So that does it for the article itself. Oh boy. So again, I want to bring up the whole impact about how this impacts the restaurant world, because you are not going to be able to do fine cooking, as Glenn Beck brought out on his program, on electric. And seeing as how chefs have earned their reputation for being a bit overpassionate and reactionary. And since they are known to have very sharp knives on their person pretty much at all times, maybe, just maybe, this isn't the segment of society that we piss off first and push to the breaking point. I'm just tossing that out there. Ah, and Amanda has to say this. I'm sure this has nothing to do with the Spliff's parents are lighting up as they cook Velveeta mac and cheese for the kiddos. Oh, I know, right? I mean, it's maddening. I mean, just this constant interference. But here's what I brought up this morning, and I was both reassured and irritated that Glenn Beck also said this on his program, because he said it in public first, so he totally stole my thunder. But the first thing I thought about was how this is just a wedge. This is to open the doorway to getting rid of other natural gas things inside of our homes and limiting our options and forcing us all onto electric. I mean, that just seems to be the way that this goes. I also thought about a quote from The Fountainhead. That's an Ayn Rand novel, which, if you never read, you should. The villain in the book is called Ellsworth Toohey. And at one point in the book, he says, "Never examine the nature of a folly. Just ask yourself what this accomplishes." So I started asking myself, what does this accomplish? Because if we decide that it's bad to have the gas stoves because they're polluting our homes, then wouldn't it also naturally follow that any kind of, water heater that runs on gas would also be bad? I mean, that's an open flame. Shouldn't we have electric after all? And, gas heaters and furnaces, those would also have to be no-nos. Obviously, think about it. It's for the children, gang. It's for the children. We just can't be doing these things because it so badly impacts the children. So, by hook or by crook, because now, from what I understand, this is only supposed to impact new construction, but that's how it starts, gang. That it'll turn into, well, if you're going to put this property on the market, you're going to have to bring it up to code because you've got a terrible hazard. And then it'll be, oh, I know you've been here forever and you don't think this is a problem, but there are children in the house. So if you want to keep custody of your children, you're going to have to convert things all to electric or lose your kids. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt that the people of these agencies would be perfectly willing to go that far. I think they've already shown us what kind of people that they are. And it would just keep on going until people, simply did not have any natural gas capacity in their homes, not even so much as a gas-fired fireplace in the living room. And then you might think, well, I could always convert it to wood, but could you? Could you? Even if that wouldn't be prohibitively expensive, which I would imagine it might be, that wood burning stove, that's probably even more of a household pollutant. Well, I mean, think about the children. What do you think? How could you expose them to that smoke? So here we are in all electric land. And the powers that be have told us that that'll be totally fine, except for the fact that our power grid is already inadequate to deal with the electrical demands of the people as it is. And as well as trying to force us onto these electric appliances, all electric appliances, they're also trying to get us all on electric cars. Our power grid has no capacity. And if you are suffering the fantasy that more solar or more wind will actually take care of that, you're out of your mind. And I think any serious person who's looked at it, even some very partisan people, I think they're aware of that. I mean, there's no way that you would not be. That would be brought up of, here is the supply we actually have. This is what we might get if we're lucky, if we expand, our green energy options. And so this is going to be the most likely consequence if you push this particular policy. I am sure has been brought up, even if no one is choosing to take it seriously, or worse, if that undesirable outcome is the goal. Because think of this. We know that even now in some areas, there are just rolling blackouts. There's just times when you are simply not going to have electrical power for one reason or another. The more areas that go along with this complete madness, I mean, the more likely you are to be experiencing those kinds of blackouts where no, you don't have any any heat. That would be inconvenient enough if it was just a matter of your stove, because you really wouldn't be able to cook. But then you also have the issue of how are you going to keep things okay in your refrigerator and your freezer. I mean, food is very expensive these days. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to be wanting to have our food ruined. I know that for sure. But then also think about, what if these blackouts happen during winter? Because there's always more power usage in winter. That's kind of how it works since forever. Uh, what about people freezing to death? Because you don't have your heat on gas. You don't have any backup options. You probably don't have a working fireplace because, I'm sure they would be deemed evil too. Because not only does that create smoke, you had to cut down a tree to do that. So you're double condemned with that. So then we have people, I guess huddling together, in their Afghans, hoping that, maybe they won't actually snuff it in the night. But, I think that would probably end up with a reduction of the population. I mean, I know that over in Europe, there's a higher degree of deaths from cold because they're also experiencing energy crisis. I mean, and that's if someone has access to it. There's a question of how on earth do I pay for it? Let's see. Oh, Amanda has a comment. Just saw that. Can't shut us all down if we have a diversified portfolio. Yeah, true. I think that will make it harder and it will take longer for them to shut us down. But if they decided to employ force, well, I mean, that we would be in a pretty sticky situation because I'm not sure that I can entirely count on the people who talk big saying, oh, if it came to X, Y, and Z, that'd be the red line. I mean, and we'd all band together and, we'd fight back against this. I just don't know how successful that would really be. Let's see. Also, Amanda, I lost power inexplicably overnight, briefly, but noticed. Yeah, I mean, we're already experiencing these outages. Now, thankfully, for a lot of us, it's not too severe yet. But as time goes on and demand increases and there are fewer and fewer resources, that's going to become more of a problem. And then we have this issue of a lot of areas are starting to creep in and impose various forms of social credit systems. Maybe you won't have enough credit for the electricity, even if there is an abundant supply. Maybe you haven't done enough good civic deeds. Maybe you aren't doing exactly what the government tells you to. So you don't get your electricity, I guess. Good luck keeping your food from spoiling. Good luck from freezing to death in the winter. Good luck studying. Good luck being able to communicate with other human beings, because that would also really compromise our abilities to keep our machines charged. And let's face it, so much of our communication happens over the internet. You take the electricity away and problems, if not outright anarchy. So I don't think we could really undersell just how bad of an idea this is and how broad reaching the consequences really could be if it was taken to its ultimate conclusion. Now, the good news is that as soon as I read that, I also started looking at what the state of Missouri had to say where I was at. Now, thankfully, in 2021, there was a law passed and enacted that forbids the banning of any source of fuel. If you have a fuel source, you are able to continue to use it. No one can take that away from you. Essentially, it was giving, the good old middle finger to the federal government, which is really the only gesture I want to give them at these days anyway. But we need more sovereign states taking that kind of action. So if you haven't already, I would strongly encourage everyone watching this video to see what your own local states are doing about this. And if they haven't, essentially put a ban on the feds banning, their decision making about what kind of energies are allowed. I probably be a good idea to start doing some very serious nagging, just tossing that out there. Pressure these officials before you find yourself in a bad situation or being forced to make decisions that are essentially not of your will. Just that. Ah, appears my gesture was appreciated by Star. Oh, I know you meant government. I know you meant government giving it the middle finger. Not to worry. We have typing issues at Blackbird's Brew all the time, so all of us have kind of learned a shorthand for what each other means. So I was right there with you, Star. But yes, this is indeed a problem because I don't see how you make this kind of decision because they're not doing this for the children. They don't do anything for the children. They had the children locked up for pretty much 2 years over COVID, forbidding them from school, really, demonizing parents who even so much as had play dates. And as a result, children's health started to fail. Their mental health has been dreadful. The suicide rate for children is absolutely astronomical. It is beyond anything our society has seen for many a year. And that's on top of telling the kids of how doomed they are. So, no, the powers that be are not contemplating this move because they care about the children. And they don't even care about the environment because there's a lot of problems when you get down to these green options. Again, I have to give a shout out to Druid Foxx. She does a lot of research on this topic. You know, every few days she's showing something saying, oh, look at this environmentally friendly solution they keep pushing on us. Yeah, here's some actual problems with it that no one is taking into account, to where it's not environmentally friendly at all. Oh, I really need to have her on the live stream because I would like to have her just go off on this subject. I think that would be absolutely epic. But I mean, we're not getting a straight information about this. They aren't actually being honest about what is environmentally friendly, what actually is a good use of resources. And as far as the whole fossil fuels argument, we have so much overwhelming evidence now that these aren't fuel sources that came to us after the dinosaurs died out and, things were buried and compressed under, goodness knows how much, weight of earth and, things compacted and it turned into these fuel sources. No, because they are finding sources of these fuel beneath the layers of where we find the dinosaurs. So, in view of that, could it be that maybe things like natural gas and oil are just kind of the natural processes of the earth, things that occur naturally, things that could it be maybe we're supposed to use? Wouldn't it be better to focus on how we could use those things more efficiently or maybe explore some of the safer nuclear technology? Wouldn't it make a lot more sense to do that than by putting people in a position to where they're going to be really, really vulnerable? And not just vulnerable, but absolutely subject to governmental control, because that's all anything ever really comes down to. The government wants to get their way. They're really sick of having to circumvent the Constitution. I think we could be a very few short years away before we no longer even pretend that we're paying attention to the document. They'll just say, gang, it's not working. You know it's not working. So we're just going to start issuing edicts and you'll just have to do what you're told. Ah, and from Child of Ash, this is far worse than the small engine ban. The propane stoves aren't the only natural gas source they are going after. It's also the furnaces and wood burning stoves. Absolutely. That was amongst the first things that I thought. And I don't think you were here with us at the beginning, but I mentioned that. And, Glenn Beck mentioned that on his radio program this morning. I mean, this is absolutely about cutting off our resources, cutting off our routes to escape, and compromising our ability to really be independent, because they don't want independent people. You can't rule independent people. Independent people will say, what exactly do I need you for? What benefit am I getting from my tax dollars as it is, let alone, the more they impose these strictures and control? Not much. And can I just bring up a slight matter? Because this goes beyond the anti-constitutional actions of these power-hungry tyrants. There was a time when it was just commonly understood in societies, particularly pagan societies, that if you were going to have a law, it had to actually be of benefit to the people, and it had to be an obvious benefit to the people. And and you couldn't just go around creating laws that weren't just not only in their interests, but actively harmed their interests. That was an issue. That was a problem. That's how kings found themselves getting replaced, if you get my drift. See, Child of Ash, that means electric has to do it all when there's already grid failures and blackouts. Yeah, I mean, we were absolutely talking about that only a moment ago. It is a huge problem as it is. Our grid cannot handle what we already ask it to do, and they want us to do more and more. And here's another thing, because I know a lot of people have put up solar panels on their homes thinking, well, maybe this will help me kind of eke by if push really came to shove, which, okay, fair enough. But as it is, a lot of these solar panels are still hooked up to the grid, and essentially extra stuff gets fed back into the grid. Supposing the government decides to exercise eminent domain, maybe they say, it's not really fair for Farmer Brown and his family to have all of this energy when their neighbors in the next town are suffering. So, I think what we'll do is we'll just assume control over their solar panels, windmills, whatever it is they're using, and we're going to redistribute that energy evenly. That way everyone is equal. I mean, it's really easy to envision, isn't it, gang? I mean, it's so transparent, and it's any excuse is going to do. Anything that makes us vulnerable, anything that makes it more likely for us to be killed, anything that reduces our numbers so the governments have an easier time maintaining control. That's what this is, and I think we have gone beyond this is just stupidity, or this is strictly ideologically of environmentalism, because I've already covered about how this really has nothing to do with the good of the environment at all. But this is just about it's just about power, and it's about malice. This isn't stupidity. This isn't incompetence. This isn't about I'm saving the planet. This is just about power and getting rid of people who would be most likely to get in your way of the exercise of that. I mean, it is truly, truly sick. And honestly, however things turn out for these people, it's no more than what they deserve. And if they do not get justice in this life, well, we all have to face our ancestors at the end, don't we, gang? Ancestors and the gods. I wonder how those conversations will really go, particularly when it comes to, what did you ever do to help your folk, your kin, the people of your country? Were you a good influence in society? Were you a bad influence? I'm just saying it's really got to be a rough conversation for them. And before I go, I want to draw attention to Child of Ash again. Solar panels only help when you have an independent battery source, Powerwall device. That's what they banned in California. No storing solar power. It has to go back to the utility companies. Yeah, that's it exactly. I mean, the mechanisms are already in place to ensure that people are not going to be able to operate independently in order to take care of themselves. And that's what it's all about. Justify your existence. Justify why you should have our resources. This ties into so many things. I mean, people really have described the opposition as a death cult. I mean, and that's more literal every day. And Amanda says the EMC in Atlanta was selling collective solar panels for electric credit. Very socialist. Oh boy, isn't it ever. It's just one of those things that just keeps on getting. The more layers we unpeel, the more insidious we see that this is, the more we just see how nasty these people are. I mean, I think we spent too much time, and I blame my generation that, self-trained ourselves to give everyone the benefit of the doubt to the point of absolute stupidity. It has blinded us to people who have ill intent towards us, and the results could be extremely tragic. So definitely start pestering your local representatives. Start telling them this is bad for all the reasons we've talked about here. I mean, just absolutely fill up their phone lines, fill up their emails, however you have to contact them. Make sure they are aware that this is something that you simply in this state. Many of the states have absolutely asserted the fact that they are sovereign. Make them live up to that. Remind them it's a lot easier to vote them out than it is to vote out people on the federal level. They're just as corrupt as anyone else, but they do want to keep their jobs, and they are counting noses. So make sure that your nose is one of the ones that they're counting. But I've gone on for just about half an hour. That's all I really have to say about this particular issue. I mean, it's so straightforward. This is this is unbelievably transparent. And I think we all know what we got to do. So catch you later, guys. Again, we've got links in the description boxes below. One last thing from Child of Ash. They're using Google Maps to locate backyard gardens now. Look up the People's Garden Initiative. They're considering organic gardens being income supplement taxable. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me a bit. I mean, that's absolutely what they're trying to do. Don't grow your own food. Don't produce your own energy. Just rely on us and hope that we decide that you're worth keeping alive. That's what it is. This is a way to just get rid of people and to, lay out the case of how it's a necessary sacrifice. That's who they are. But links in the description box below, source material, as well as my various pagan colleagues who are also creating content. There you have links to all of their stuff below, as well as an invite to Blackbird's Brew. If you haven't joined us there already, you are very welcome. I'd love to continue the conversation with you there. And I think on that note, I will be signing off. So see you guys later.